Well, I was directed to this, and let's just see how pitiful this can be. What's sad here in America is that the recently domesticated African Americans, um, here's the current culture: get a thick gold chain and a gun on a kid, and put on slouchy clothes that look like hand me downs, and don't wear a hat correctly. In fact, it's got a brim so it protects your eyes, but you're not going to protect your eyes so you can squint. Now, the odd thing here is that everyone looking at this knows that this is just fake, gold plated at best bullshit, and that this would weigh 2 pounds and be worth $60,000, and somebody just kept that kid and take that shit. And black people would do so, definitely. But it's all just fake hoopah, and everybody knows it. So it looks disgusting, but yet they've embraced this. It's become this terrible thing where children are really whispered in their ear as children, black kids, hate whitey, and they start hatred against it. It's disgusting. They start racism and hatred from an early age. They don't even know what hate is, and yet they're taught to do it. It's disgusting. Let's see what this guy says. It's just an article here. Hmm. Black person begging. Is that guy Roy Rogers? Yeah. So, why black people love begging and cheerleading for Caucasian causes. It's a strange title. You can tell it's racist and disgusting, and somehow we allow this crazy foolishness to go on. I think it's just to show the pitifulness of it, and they let it go on. And we'll let anybody type anything in America. It's part of our laws, so we have that edict. We're going to do it. He starts out strangely his two first words: an unbiased study. Three, actually, an unbiased study of history and culture will inform anyone of moderate intelligence that the black American in the United States has been treated worse than any other ethnic group worldwide. And I know the world is trying to have pity for Negroids, but no, the white culture has actually been discriminated by its own people in different facets for much longer than any slavery ever went on. And the Dark Ages, people were getting skinned alive, burned alive, all kinds of crazy shit. Burned as witches when people didn't know what the hell was going on. The Inquisition, things like that. And of course, Irish were the first slaves in America. Until somewhere in the mid 1700s, there were 6 times more Irish and Caucasian slaves in America than there were blacks. And really, you think they got treated real bad, but it's amazingly how bad they were treating each other back in Africa. And so, this is a call for pity in the first paragraph. And what's sad is it starts with unbiased and it ends with a biased statements. But then he continues, going extremely biased. Not only were blacks stolen from their homeland and stripped of their culture, language, religion, economics, social independence, self determination, and our own institutions of justice, they were also worked like beasts of the field and treated as such. I can't get through a whole paragraph without having to stop and correct this person. Not only were blacks stolen from their homeland, they weren't stolen from their homeland. It was your own people that were capturing and selling their own people. You were sold. Back then it was legal. It was happening to white people. It happened to white people longer than black people. And most Negroids think that it started here with some Jewish slave masters. No, for 900 years before the Americas were even found, the Islamic slave trade was uh, getting Negroids, and in the slave trade, they had the Islamic slave trade of North Africa. The difference there, though, was that they were castrated as eunuchs, and so there was really no diaspora that happened out of it at all. It was just pretty much a use and dispose situation for them, and it's clearly noted. These are your Moors that the black people seem to think they are. And it's crazy how many Negroid Islamics there are whenever you know the history of it. It's kind of odd and disgusting, but then again, most all of this is. So blacks weren't stolen from their homeland. You were sold by your own people for alcohol and beads and or less, like a drive-through slave mart. And so that's not true whenever you even try to get your first sentence out here, but and stripped of their culture. You could continue to keep your culture. It's believed that you easily saw your culture to be primitive and not worth what you had developed it into. You look at the African cultures that are back now and people stomping around on the ground, living in dung huts and things in a primitive way. I mean, you can go back to that. You can go back to Africa easily. It's as simple, but you don't want to. And so there's this jealousy that drives this hatred. Anyhow, stripped of their culture, their language. Yeah, you're not sure of your language from back there over there too. You could learn it, but how many black people have tried to learn Bantu? So you can act like stripped of the language, but what's amazing is this language that we're speaking right now is the language that the world is adopting as being the superior language of the planet for these people that are talking right now. Let's see, stole their language, stole your religion. Um, by the way, when we go back to language, you didn't have a written language, you had a spoken language, and it's tribal, and there are many, 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 many dialects. It's not like one dialect like we have with Caucasians, and they're all able to speak with each other. Negroids are extremely tribal and have different dialects and subdialects all through Africa. There's no real unity at all. And your religion. Do you even know what your religion was? It was kind of a voodoo thing that had cannibalism and all kinds of weird crap built into it, and is really not accepted even by you. If you took any colored person other than a Negro and you showed what you used to do as a religion, you would laugh it off. But that's okay, and you can go back to it if you'd like. Africa still exists, and they still haven't, they still have their own religions. The religion of Negroids never was the Bible. That's a Caucasian thing with the Hebrews and everything else. It has nothing to do with Negroids. Although, disgustingly, I have people get on my videos constantly telling me that the blacks were the Hebrews. Jesus was black. All these silly things that are really just lies. And it's disgusting. And then you get points of view like this that are biased and disgusting. They took away their economics. They didn't have economics, for God's sakes. Social independence. Y'all were capturing and selling each other tribally to each other. It was going on before anybody ever got there. It's what y'all did. You captured and sold each other around and stuff. It's disgusting. Your self-determination. You didn't really have any. I guess the ones that were the victors did and everything, but one clear note, the people that were captured and sold weren't the victors. Right. So, no, it's not that. Now, blacks were kings and stuff. No, the kings weren't the ones that ever made it onto a boat. It was the people that were not kings. And in a society where there is a king, there's 100,000 people that aren't a king and a king. It's not like everybody gets to be the king. I mean, for God's sakes. In England, where there are many, many successions of kings, does anybody say we were kings? No, we were subject to a king is more of the way. It's kind of incredible they come across with this stuff, but self-determination and our own institutions of justice. Institutions of justice. You didn't have institutions. You didn't have buildings. You didn't have writings or statutes. The laws were just kind of willy-nilly made up on the spot, depending on how people felt. It's kind of disgusting whenever you look at it, and it's real primitive and driven by a witch doctor. Right, and she could throw some bones in a pile and end up telling you if you're going to die or not. And it's kind of disgusting, and it really didn't have a justice factor to it too much. And then, of course, what they did quite often was kill them and eat them. But they were also worked like beasts of the field and treated as such. My dad picked cotton for 4 cents an hour, and it was a common thing for all people to do back then. In fact, I just really, um, they, worked to the bone, worked to this, worked to everything. Everybody worked hard back then. People that work on farms today work real hard, but Caucasians have made incredible inventions that make it a whole lot easier. And this agriculture is what feeds the world. You look at the nightmare in agriculture in South Africa and all through Africa and what they've done, especially to the white farmers that were feeding them. And it's caused them an extreme amount of hardship because they're really just now coming out of hunter-gatherer and being forced to do so, kind of. That wasn't their idea, and they didn't evolve into it. Um, Cattle and things like that were brought to them. The cattle from there all come from Asia, Eurasia, and stuff. They were all domesticated there. The grains of Egypt, the cattle of Egypt, everything. And of course, Egypt is a Caucasian people. But let's continue. Um, the social construct of slavery was supported by scientific. Hold on, beasts of the field and treated as such. Look up what Irish went through. Oh, it's covered up, kind of. Look what Irish went through, and there were 6 times more Irish in America. They were under slavery. Now, it was all chattel slavery, and it was legally only 7 years until a black man who used to be a slave and was freed, named Anthony Johnson, went to court and demanded lifetime slavery for blacks, and actually won, and that set a statute, and so it was a black person that did that too. And it was a Jewish slave trade. Only 1.6% of whites, even at the top of slavery, ever owned slaves. A lot of them were owned by one certain plantation. It weren't like casting all around. Although Jewish people had a pride in the fact that they had how many slaves each one owned. That's well documented too. And 1.6% of Caucasians owned black people during the height of slavery. That's not a very good percentage, and especially when you figure in that they consider Jews as part of the white people, although Jews consider regular white people as goyim and cattle, no different than a real slave, and they were the ones doing a lot of the Irish slavery and everything until they got a hold of their little black pearl here. But anyhow, and it never really was whites' idea. In fact, whites were the one that stopped it, freed you, and are giving you a chance. You were supposed to go back to Liberia because of problems like this that we foresaw in the future, but y'all swore you weren't going to act like this. But lo and behold, here we are, not getting anywhere. The social construct of slavery was supported by the scientific community of the time. I guess you could say so because they tried to, now Jews and the Islamic people tried to justify it, saying that you must have been the Hamites of the Bible and stuff. Well, no, Negroids are a total separate subrace. They really aren't in the same thing. We don't come from the same, far, far back we come from the same origin, but there's no little, God did a magic trick or anything like that. But blacks were led to believe that, and somehow blacks still believe they were somehow mentioned in the Bible that they would have some one black kid, but then who would it marry? It'd have to marry a Caucasian because that's the only other people that came out of the boat. Therefore, you'd have a mulatto. Now, who would that marry? And it would dilute from there. You never could have a straight Negroid race. It's funny how that lasted for so long, and it's kind of funny how it lasts today. Well, the only reason it does is because black people grasp for things and stuff. It's okay. The social construct of slavery was supported by the scientific community at the time while interwoven into the fabric of American society development. Sure, yeah, Irish slaves too, you bet. The very creation of capitalism as an economic apparatus is due to the exploitation of black slave labor. No, it had been slave labor played a part in it, but it wouldn't be directly due. No, no, that's exaggerating. That's black exaggeration. They always want to show you the worst picture they can. Probably a runaway slave here or something that they had caught. I don't know. He looks kind of like an old man. I don't know what's going on here, or it doesn't really matter. Um, Whenever Irish slaves ran, they had this happen to them. When black slaves ran, they had this happen to them and stuff. It was a normal thing for if you were somebody's property. It's the same thing as a horse getting away. Do they sit around and just hold guns to your head constantly? No. Black people like to hold guns, though. Like, guns aren't a black thing, by the way. It's a Caucasian invention. Black slave labor started the stock market. That's a terrible lie. With black bucks being the stock of trade, and this slave labor is the foundation of Wall Street. That's a strange misconstruing of any facts whatsoever. Kind of disgusting to even try to throw that. Wall Street was created by black people being slaves. Yeah. That was created by American businesses having a worth and a value. Something black people don't really have much of. Black inventions were stolen, the creators uncompensated. I've got a couple of videos on the lies of black inventions. When you file for a patent, it doesn't mean you invented anything. All they really show is a lot of that. Sure, there's been a few black inventions. After Caucasian domestication, a lot of things have happened. Yep, we can always accredit that to the white people that helped the black people out. They wouldn't have come up with that idea in Africa. Right. They're seeing a brave new world. They didn't know what they were going to see on that boat ride, but once they got over here, it was a brave new world. Of course, one they didn't create, and they don't like that. Well, if you don't like it so much, go back to what you had before. You're not going to change this one to be some kind of lie. It's not going to be able to happen. And when you do things like this, it looks disgusting. The rest of the world looks at this like, man, they are jealous, and look at all the problems it causes, and they go around shooting and getting all wired up and shooting people and doing all kinds of things all wired up about lies. It's disgusting. Black music and culture was appropriated by whites and redistributed as white-faced. Yeah, at one time Negro music wasn't allowed out, but hey, by the way, you were always playing on white instruments. You were taught how to play white instruments and stuff. Jazz is not a black construct. Most of this isn't. The only thing that's really a black music that you can even give any credit for is hip-hop. And it's questionable if rapping over a beat like Aerosmith or other people had done before is really any different than just saying a nursery rhyme, although it's turned into is a bunch of hatred. That's all that hip-hop music is really about, is hatred. So burgeoning black businesses with thriving neighborhoods, that's never happened, man. Were burned to the ground, and black people wanting home ownership were turned away due to the discriminatory practice called redlining. Black churches of worship were bombed and terrorized. Man, there's all kinds of things that happened a long time ago. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that happened that black people look in a total wrong way. You see the mentality you're seeing here is what caused them to riot and do crazy shit they do today. And then the powers that be not wanting that to happen caused the things he's speaking of. And so it's brought upon themselves, by themselves, by themselves, over and over again, repeatedly, over and over. Black churches of worship were bombed and terrorized. Blacks were and are demonized in the news and popular culture, and are faced with bias and prejudice in the hiring practices and situations of upward mobility and advancement in the workplace. I guess most people can comprehend the fact that you were recently domesticated and that you have a chip on your shoulder. And nobody really wants to have chip on their shoulder in a position of power, because they lose their minds if anything happens. And if you lose your job, oh, it's because I'm black, or all these things. It's all race card and it's thrown in your face and stuff. And most people just don't want to have to deal with that bullshit that's caused by all of this. And of course, black people are faced with bias here in America because this is a white culture and a white country that was created. We the people didn't contain black people. We allowed it much later, and apparently it's still causing a problem desperately. Due to enslavement and the mental and physical ramifications of the culture of slavery, poverty was the inheritance of the black community. Funny how they didn't do that to the Irish. Without items to trade, sell, or barter, no culture of people can have a thriving economy. Well, you have to build things, you have to make things, you have to be able and have that ability. We've tried to school you for years now, and it's disgusting how now blacks just falter on it. They want to have bad grammar, and they don't care. In fact, it's cool to be uneducated, which is another part of that hip hop culture that shows the degeneration of blacks. Without land to build on, no community can organize effectively and collectively create currency. The generation of currency is the foundation of power worldwide. Black people do all kinds of things to make money. There's a lot of them don't have a job. They sell dope. They do all kinds of things to make money. A lot of them are extremely illegal, but a lot of them are. There's a lot of people that are gainfully employed black people. In fact, black unemployment is at its lowest ever in the recorded history of the statistic, yet we still get this yakety mouth. Make no mistake, land and the control of resources is the key to generation of wealth. Well, yeah, this is the white people's land here. They'll sell some to you. You just got to have the money. For example, the family that owns your local utilities, i.e. electric gas companies, will be wealthy until the sun burns out. This wealth enables the utility owners to purchase more land and resources, which in turn leads to more power. Yeah, it's called business. And they were able to build an infrastructure that brings electricity to you, and you have somehow a knack to bitch about it. They built their own infrastructure and paid for their own way in doing it with some government supplementals because it's running the government in the United States. Black people don't seem to understand how things work, and they're real jealous about it all, you can see. So why are black people so determined to go hard and stick up for the causes of other races and cultures, even though these same races and cultures rarely or minimally support black causes? The shorter answer is power. We rarely stand up for black causes. You know, the only reason you're in America, the only reason you were ever freed, the only reason that you have a chance, that you're wearing clothes, that you can drive a car, that you're in America, is from white choice. It's amazing the lies and the deception and the twist that these people have. It's disgusting. It's this racist thing that's come out of blacks where they just feel entitled. We're often taught that money is the root of all evil and that rich people don't enter heaven, and all sorts of religious and psychological sorcery to keep us from attaining the knowledge of economics, financial literacy, and self-determination. Do you think the white people in the white Bible don't read the parable about how hard it is for a rich man to get into heaven because of the vices and the problems he might have as a learning tool of what not to do? Yet quite often when blacks receive some money, what do? Right. The goal of big corporations are the 1% that control all the world's resources. To keep you a consummate consumer until you die, work more and buy more. Yeah, none of us really like that. We'd all like to be just rich kings floating around in a palace, but then who would get anything done? And we've come to terms with that long, long, long ago. Since wealthy Caucasians through Western cultures, psychological and physical warfare, really? Conquered and dominate the world's land and resources, wielding almost unlimited power. Man, you are really praising on those whiteys, aren't you? Yeah, we we did conquer the world, create the language everybody uses, all the modern stuff, and we can fly now and go to the moon. And Africans still in Africa haven't come through the Stone Age really yet, and they're in domesticated areas they're getting there, but the mentality is still definitely not there, and you can see that. But yeah, black people across the diaspora have adopted to a follow the leader, if you can't beat them, join them mentality. I think that's the tribal mentality they had before any of this started. You're not going to blame that on YThe again, are you? You know, y'all are given your own choices, and that's the one you choose. We see no value on our own creativity and cultural impact. I agree. We are complacent with Western cultural bullying us. We have developed Stockholm syndrome. I wouldn't say that you're complacent at all. In fact, you're yakety mouth ruining it all. It's really what's going on here is you are ruining the possibility for unity. And you don't see it. It's hilarious. Jew daddies all set it up. Media got you hating YThe, and it was really him that brought you over. It was the Jewish slave trade. Yeah. Yeah, but blacks just can't fathom that idea. What does this guy say? Our situation is more psychological than people will admit. Black kids kill black kids for the same reason cops do. They see no value. Wow. That's some straight up from a black man. It could be that they see no value in their own people. And that's got to be Whitey's fault too. I mean, we made you primitives. Right. Yeah, you're going to blame that on us. The fact that you never had a written language, that you have low IQs and everything, a penchant for raping and killing and things. It's all our fault, isn't it? Your mentality is our fault. It's pitiful. It's just really begging off of, it's hateful begging. Despite various examples of black cultural appropriation by popular media, despite the fact that America's biggest and primary import is music and culture worldwide, America's biggest import is not music and culture worldwide. Do you even look at import documentation? Are we importing music as the biggest import in America? Despite blacks being the biggest consumers in America, despite the numerous black inventions that propelled America forward, despite the free labor that built the very foundation of American capitalism, with black backs being the first currency, despite the black nannies that still raise European families, despite our music influencing culture. I'm just going to stop there. Let's go back. Despite blacks being the biggest consumers in America, no, you're less than 12%. You're only 12.6% of the population and haven't grown in over 60 years. It's because you shoot each other for shoes and shit. But no, you're definitely not the biggest consumer in America, and everyone knows that. Despite the numerous black inventions that propelled America forward, there were few and scant, and they were built on other inventions when they were and taught by Caucasians. It won't be looked at as another way. Sure, you did it. Yay, look what we taught you to do. Right. Oh, that sounds so racist. Really? You sound so racist acting the other way. And one of them is valid. Despite the free labor that built the very foundation of America, yeah, them Irish people, 6 times the amount of them, with black backs and Irish backs being the first currency. Yeah, the Irish were the first slaves. Despite the black nannies and white nannies and so on that still raise European families. Yeah, I mean, you can be a nanny of a European. They'll actually trust you enough to help raise their kids. And yet, what do you do with it? See, you just can't understand the world. Despite the resources and richness of ancient and indigenous African societies like Egypt is not a Negroid society, Timbuktu, Kush, and Ghana, which aren't that damn great, people. Despite African spirituality being the mother of all world religions, and no, African spirituality is not being the mother of all religions. Sure, there's the Caucasians of North Africa and Baal worship and the Canaanites and all that type stuff. All around the Mediterranean was always all Caucasians. Never involved black people. So it's not. Still, lots of black people still would rather be a sidekick Robin to the white man's Batman. Well, see, Batman created a bunch of nice stuff. Robin didn't. Robin was an acrobat in a circus. Batman let Robin be his sidekick. But man, if Robin would start to get yakety mouth, he'd kick him out the Batmobile pretty dead damn quick. Due to miseducation, misinformation, and plain old ignorance and apathy, the black man in America sees his poverty and powerlessness as a source of pride. Yeah, I'd say that. Yeah, they look at anything just degenerate as pride now. He reveals it in his even struggle soundtracks to support his prideful poverty ideal. And that's all they talk about. So how are you going to get out of it if you don't? You think it's like releasing you from it, but it's embracing you in it. He chooses not to upset the normalcy of white privilege. Really? It's what you're doing right now. For fear of no longer receiving the crumbs off the Caucasian table. No, blacks have no fear. They do stupid crap like you're doing right now. All kinds of racist shit's going out and all these, ideologies and lies about how they're Hebrews and they're the real Jews and we was Egyptians and just terrible. Emotionally paralyzed by fear from seeing his leadership and fellow man assassinated. Oh, now you're emotionally paralyzed because I'm guessing because MLK got shot. If you looked into MLK, he was hooked up with Jews. They were hoping to run him into a communist ideal regime. People, you can't even fathom the reality of truth. This is disgusting. Incarcerated and police brutalized without recourse. Of course, you don't have any recourse. It's the law, and then you mad about it. I don't give a damn if you're mad about it. It just makes you get beat by the cops worse. You can't fathom the problem that there's too many videos. It's a cry wolf. It's definitely a boy who cried wolf. He chooses to toe the line. It's TOW, not TOE. Come on, man. Smile and wave, stay humble, fit in, kiss ass, and keep collectively is in check for survival. Yeah, you want keep collecting a check for survival. Hold on. What do white people do? We toe the line. We help to make it all work. We smile and wave. We stay humble. We fit in. Sometimes we have to kiss ass, and we keep collecting our checks for survival. You got a problem with that? You can go back to Africa. It's the way the world works. You don't like it. You don't like a lot of things. Like you would have come up with anything better. Africa come up with anything better? Right. The fortunate thing about this mentality is that blacks are some of the most creative people on the planet. No, they're not. They're not. You might make a creative beat or a rhyme. Kids make nursery rhymes. We have the power to create and own our creations and the distribution of them. Sure you do. Why do you allow that? The game of shucking, jiving, and living in fear is no longer necessary. Yes, you should quit shucking and jiving, lying, coveting, bearing false witness, all these things. It's no longer necessary. With the internet, you can go direct to consumer and capitalize without the middleman. The internet age and the access gives it our way of financial power and the escape from poverty. A lot of people are using the internet. We allow you to too. Black people are able to do anything, buy anything. Then once capital has been acquired, the next step is land acquisition and then the purchase of political lobbyists. Oh, well, this sounds like you're going to try to take over or do something. Political lobbying. This isn't your country to do that in. Yeah, it's not. It'll be one by the people for the people. You're a small minority. You're 12.6% of the population. Hip hop was, and to some lesser degree still is, a model for how being creative can help blacks and employ their own. Hip hop started off as a force of black pride and was a means of getting wealth. Yeah, you could say that blacks can create hip hop and then try to employ their own. If white had that same idea, then you wouldn't have any jobs. Black unemployment is at its lowest ever because we're trying to help you. Many young men have saved themselves and their families by forming a music label, putting words over a beat and monetizing it. Yep, kind of a cheap thing, but I mean, now what we're relegated to is blacks can either be a basketball player or a hip hop star. There's only room for a certain amount of basketball players on a team, and hip hop is dying. Mumble rap. We should become heroes, Harris, for our own ethnicity and support our own causes and uplift us as passionately as we support others. I agree. As of this writing, the case of Sandra Bland, a black activist who was hung in her cell as a minor traffic dispute with an officer, is making headlines. Ooh, a headline for you. Black people ran into a white people's house, kept them hostage over the weekend, raped the lady, killed them all, took their shit, and made them order pizza. You're not going to try to weigh things on a plate because you're only 12% of the population and cause more than 50% of the crime. You don't want to start weighing things on a plate or throwing things out there. That's why the cop thing doesn't work for you, is because they like, cop shot this guy. And you're like, yeah, well, you've robbed 400,000 places. We are taught to pray, march, and look to white Jesus for a better afterlife. If you're going to go with Christianity and stuff, I mean, our religion in our land over here in our world, it'll be what you do. If you start trying to say that he's black Jesus, it's going to cause a problem because that's blaspheming the image of God, and he doesn't like that. Right. Either that or we'll be advised that we have to fit in order to be successful. Yes, whites have to too. They have to fit in somewhere. You can't be manky man. It's not productive. It's counterproductive. Black lives only seem to really matter to black people, while we passionately support other agendas in solidarity with other ethnic, civil, and gestures. Millions, $1 trillion a year is spent just on welfare for blacks and other programs a year that's never going to come back. And that's over and above the amount of taxes that are taken from blacks every year. It's a loss and a negative. America couldn't sustain if any other culture was doing that. We have 12%, 13% of our population sucking $1 trillion out of it. We have a few $1 trillion debt. If we were to just get rid of that, we could collect our debt in a short period of time. You could go to Africa and try to make Wakanda. I mean, now that you know how to do it and you've been schooled and domesticated, you could probably do it. But you don't have any drive, you don't have the ability. And that's why it doesn't happen. It's time we retake our power. You never had power. You retake our power. The power you had was in Africa. It was over tribal little stuff. You never really had a power over anything really. And become producers and consumers of our own products and stuff. So if you were to start making products, you would make it a black thing. If whites did that, then you wouldn't have anything. What's funny is the blacks all want to get yakety mouth about how they would treat the whites and do all this stuff. And if the whites had the same ideal, blacks wouldn't be here. It's It's time we strategically boycott a specific company every time a black person gets shot and killed by law enforcement unjustly. Well, they seem to think every single one of them's unjust. You've seen all these riots they have and stuff, and then come to find out, well, here's the video on it, and you're like, yeah, he started going back at the cop. Yeah, this happened. Yeah, look, he's robbing the store. Yeah, he's doing that. I mean, oh, but they shot him. Well, you shouldn't shoot people for that. We make up the laws, man, not you. What, would you just let all of it go on? Man, imagine the anarchy if blacks had control of anything with that mentality. It's time that we step up out of the Caucasian shadow and use our own creation's wealth and mindset to gain power. You can gain wealth, you're not going to gain much power, you're not going to ever take over in America. It'll be stopped if it ever attempts. It's not a racist thing in any way, shape, or form. It's just not your land. You're African Americans. You're almost like a guest here. And it's getting old. It's getting old. We must be fearless, fearless, all these things. You're trying to make it into a war. It's a us versus them situation. We're trying to make it unity. You're trying to make it a problem. Now it's starting to become a problem. We're getting tired of it. Yep, right when you step up and you're like, oh, Makin, man. We're like, we're about sick of you and your bullshit. These evil streets is rough. Love that grammar. Ain't no one we can trust. No, not even black people. Either roll to rush or get rushed. Yeah, black people running around shooting each other for shoes. Because all we got is us. Man, you can make money off that. If you can make money off that, it's not be powerful. It's be pitiful. Guys, I'm about done with this. It's just really disgusting. The intelligent part of society sees this, and I don't think the unintelligent part of society realizes how foolish they seem. I'm out. Peace.